Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art and culture, and this is Billboard Breakdown. You know, it's kind of odd. After several weeks with so much going on in the Hot 100, it's nice to get a bit of a breather here. The biggest news this week isn't an avalanche of new or returning songs, but rather the longevity of the one at the top. And as such, we've got one of the smallest numbers of new tracks that I've ever seen in the 20 or so weeks that I've covered the Hot 100 charts. And honestly, I'm not sure how that will evolve over the next few weeks. The insanity of album releases in the first quarter of this year seems to have finally given way to some relative calm right now, which means that unless we have more artists starting to throw some curveballs, and I wouldn't discount that, I've seen Drake and Earl Sweatshirt this year, we might have a bit of a chance to, relax a little bit. Well, relax except for our top 10, that is, where things are definitely interesting this week, and not really because of major shifts either. No, the talk right now is about Uptown Funk by Mark Ronson and Bruno Mars hitting their 14th week at number 1. Only 2 weeks shy of the record set by Mariah Carey and Boyz II Men with One Sweet Day. Now at this point, it's a numbers game to see if Uptown Funk manages to get there, because it did not top the sales charts this week. And while it still leads in streaming, YouTube, and radio airplay, it is slipping steadily. The question is, as it's been over the past few weeks, is how long can that slip hold up against any competition, and who that competition is gonna be. Once again, Sugar by Maroon 5 had a consistently solid week at number 2, but the airplay gap is still measurable, and it's still behind Uptown Funk in the majority of categories. And there's a question how long it might take to close that gap, because Love Me Like You Do by Ellie Goulding, even rising number 3, probably will not get there. The airplay boost is just not enough to compensate for slips across the rest of the board. The next year, we got Earned It by The Weeknd rising number 4 off the backs of a lot more radio play and saw enough sales and streams, but once again, it doesn't have a lot of YouTube here. It's been weak, and the question of whether or not radio can really compensate for that, honestly, probably can, but can it fast enough? And Thinking Out Loud by Ed Sheeran, it's out of the conversation at this point, losing pretty much across the board, and especially in airplay to fall off to number 5. Below that, we've got 2 songs that are fairly stable. Trap Queen by Fetty Wap, which still has a huge lead in streaming and solid enough sales as the radio struggles to catch up, and Style by Taylor Swift, which is slipping in sales and pretty much everywhere else, but still has enough airplay built up to hold on to number 7. Beneath that, GDFR by Flo Rida, Sage the Gemini, and Lucas actually manages some gains in streaming, sales, and airplay to rise to number 8, which is enough to force back 4 or 5 seconds by Rihanna, Kanye West, and Paul McCartney back to number 9, which at this point is just hemorrhaging everything. Bizarrely, except for YouTube, but it was never much of a presence there anyway, so who really cares? But now, we need to talk about that one song that could indeed serve as a serious threat to Uptown Funk. See You Again by Wiz Khalifa featuring Charlie Puth. Now, I praised that song back when I first covered it 3 weeks ago, but with the smash success of Furious 7 and the very smart placement of the song within the movie to serve as a tribute to the late Paul Walker in a way that was very respectful rather than exploitative, it has caused the song to vault up with massive sales to rocket up to a number 10 slot. But here's the thing, even with the video set to debut next week on YouTube that reportedly has lots of footage of Paul Walker, and even despite some real gains on the radio, all about timing here. Sales predicted next week for See You Again are set to be enormous, but will sales be enough to compensate for not quite making enough ground in other categories just yet, especially on the radio airplay? In this case, I think only time will tell. So before we talk about the rest of our gains this week, let's briefly discuss our losers and our dropouts. Well, there weren't that many this week. Of the former category, we basically have a group of country songs that have basically reached the end of their run. In this case, either a little bit prematurely, like Lonely Tonight by Blake Shelton and Ashley Monroe, or Just Getting Started by Jason Aldean, or rather naturally, like Make Me Wanna by Thomas Rhett. Beyond that, losers are easy enough to explain. Apparently by J. Cole continues its graceful slide down to 99. Frankly, it's amazing it lasted this long. I think even fans of the guy can actually admit that. And El Perdón by Nicky Jam and Enrique Iglesias falls off to 90 and loses most of the streams it had from the YouTube Music Awards, not exactly surprising there. And Prayer and Sea by Lilywood and the Prick, remixed by Robin Schultz, it continues its steady descent to number 70. Don't expect to see it around that much longer. And besides Wiz Khalifa's absolutely monstrous hit, there are a fair few gains this week as well. As expected, the arrival of King Kunta's video for Kendrick Lamar vaulted him back up to 61, and the new arrivals of Hey Mama by David Guetta featuring Nicki Minaj and Afrojack, and You Know You Like It by DJ Snake and Aluna George got more of a boost to 56 and 83 respectively. Not the first time DJ Snake would crack the chart this week, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. Elsewhere, the other gains are based off of steady increases, whether we wanted them or not. Worth It by Fifth Harmony and Kid Ink lands at 41 for some reason. And Where Are You Now by Skrillex, Diplo, and Justin Bieber continues to 64. Again, I don't see the appeal to the song, but I guess it's there. Most discouragingly of all is the continued growth of Meghan Trainor's Dear Future Husband, a song that just gets worse and worse every single time I hear it, and yet it jumped up to number 39. I don't see it having enough real presence to really snatch into the top 10 or even the top 20, but right now, with a fair number of songs starting to slow rotation out, you never know, and that's a bad sign. Anyway, this week we have 0 returning entries and only 5 new songs. So, let's not waste any more of your time. Number 98, Commas by Future.
Let's fuck up some commas. Let's fuck up some commas, yeah. 100,000 to 100,000. 100,000 on 100,000. 300,000, 500,000. $1 million, let's have money shout. Fuck up some commas. Let's fuck up some commas, yeah. Let's fuck up some commas. Let's fuck up some commas, yeah. 40,000 to 100,000. 100,000 on 100,000.
Now, longtime viewers of my channel, particularly in hip-hop, should be well familiar with my opinion on Future. Namely, that he's a painfully generic rapper with terrible tone, sloppy wordplay, rarely any production worth mentioning, and who feels the need to slather auto-tune all over his voice for no discernible reason. Certainly not because it sounds good. His album, Honest, was one of the worst I ever reviewed, period, at least until Ray Shrimmer came along. And it also seems to be mostly a lie, considering he was apparently cheating on ex-fiancée Sierra. And while I tend to ignore artists' personal lives when I listen to their music, I did feel a bit of a positive twinge of catharsis when Sierra released the breakup track I Bet beyond just being a really good song. Which it is. Well, I should have expected Future would have something coming out in response to that, and we got one song from one of 3 mixtapes he dropped since Honest. This song being from the tape Monster, and really, it's nothing special whatsoever. Future brags about fucking up some commas, a reference to spending money in the commas to separate thousands and millions. That's the level of wordplay we're getting here. Of course, that's provided you can understand him at all, and through the slurred auto-tune and the third verse hopping on the Migos flow to brag about selling cocaine and having all these luxury goods, all set against your standard trap beat with a howling squeal occasionally added just to ruin any sort of mood or vibe. It's not even that the song is bad by Future standards, because he's made worse, just that it's boring, recycled luxury rap that's nowhere near fun or interesting. And a song that Future has already written in different forms dozens of times. In other words, skip it. Number 97, Love Me Like You Mean It by Kelsea Ballerini. So for those of you who follow country music, it's been a pretty slow start for the scene in 2015, both in albums and on the radio. But you know what? The major labels in Nashville won't kick into gear. The indie labels certainly aren't gonna waste any time. In this case, the launch of Kelsea Ballerini, who started writing songs in her teens and now has a full debut pop country album coming out in May that I'll probably cover. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like she's gonna be the next Lucy Hale, because I'm more than a little bit underwhelmed by this. Aside from a flow in the chorus that sounds strikingly like the chorus of Crash My Party by Luke Bryan, my main issues with this track come down to the instrumentation, with the obvious drum machines, the synth flutters, and the effects doing the best they can to actually obscure any real country elements or real melody to the song. Kelsea does seem like a fine enough singer, and she does have a knack for a good rollicking rhyming cadence in her songwriting, and while the song does fit very much into convention, challenging a guy to stand behind his words and actually stick with her, which it's passable there. In other words, the song's listenable, but doesn't really excite me all that much. It's okay, I guess. Number 91, Good Lovin' by Ludacris featuring Miguel.
Cause I'm troubled by the things that I see. Ooh, I need some real good loving. Ain't nobody been around here loving on me.
So Ludacris' comeback album might not have sold as well as in his heyday, but it still did better than I expected, and he even managed to lodge a single on the charts, likely because of that performance on Ellen, I'm guessing. And I have to be honest, it's a bit of a departure for Ludacris with this sort of single, especially in the production, with the warm, scratchy piano sample, Miguel's soulful delivery, and the downbeat themes of Ludacris reminiscing on failed relationships. And yeah, so much of the song is carried by the fact that Ludacris just has buckets of raw charisma and sounds genuinely regretful with a really solid flow, but also because it's a solid, well-structured song because he doesn't have any easy answers to said breakups and making up with some of these girls and potentially reconciling with them. It's not the best song off of Ludacris by a long shot, and I don't really see it sticking around all that long given it plays things a little bit more seriously on the pop charts. But if we're gonna get new rap songs on the charts, I'd sure as hell take Ludacris over Future or Young Thug or Big Sean any day, so there's that. Number 87, The Matrimony by Wale featuring Usher.
It don't belong to anyone but you. Hey, if that's a question of my love, you got it. Baby, don't worry, I got plans for you. Yeah.
Now, I've gotten a lot of requests by people to cover the album About Nothing by Wale, and honestly, I'm a little bewildered as to why. I mean, the guy did start off as a solid enough spitter with some interesting content, albeit with some technical rhyming issues that have always frustrated me. But then he signed with Rick Ross's Maybach Music Group, and its records just seemed to lose a lot of focus, and I'm sorry, they weren't very good. One thing that I've always found very odd about him is his love of Seinfeld of all things, even getting Jerry Seinfeld himself to appear on in this album in particular, and titling all his tracks like episodes of the show. Now, the mixed critical reception to the album About Nothing has had me a little bit wary about really covering it, and honestly, after this track, I'm still conflicted. Yeah, Usher sounds fantastic over the smoother soul production, duh, it's Usher, but I'm not sure the actual content of the track really works. See, he's trying to act as though there's a reassurance that Wale's gonna be there eventually for his current girl, and he can see it working out in the end, except the lifestyle and the fame keep causing him to slip up, along with his own fears of commitment. And while I appreciate the honesty of the song, dude, saying you don't want her to excel and somehow surpass you, I'm sorry, it's not a good implication. And you'd think that if the love was strong enough to justify marriage, it would persevere beyond all of your temptations. The fact you're making excuses for them is not a good sign. Come with Wale forcing a couple of his rhymes? Look, I don't know. I've heard this sort of song done a lot better. Not bad, but not precisely great either. Sorry. And finally, number 77, Get Low by Dillon Francis and DJ Snake.
Get low when the whistle go.
So it looks like DJ Snake is making his big play for 2015, this time teaming up with American producer Dillon Francis. The song originally dropped back in 2014, but it also landed on the Furious 7 soundtrack, which got it this slot on this list. And here's the thing, for a trap song like this, it does a lot right. Several solid crescendos, good varied percussion, a really good anchoring melody that does manage to switch up balanced against vocal snippets that overall fit well against the hi-hats. Hell, I'd argue it evolves more and has more going on than Turned Down for What, even if though it doesn't really quite have the killer force of personality that is Lil Jon. Now, the one piece I didn't love in the song is the Middle Eastern inspired tone after that first crescendo, just a little bit too nasal for my taste, but honestly, the melodies have a lot of personality and it's a pretty solid groove, and it's a very listenable song. Sure, a lot of the reason right now it's probably getting played is because of Ray Shrimmer, but I prefer just to ignore those two, pretend they don't exist, and it seems like the reception of actual fans of DJ Snake and Dillon Francis has been very much the same as mine. So, you know what? I like the song. I'll take it. So, wow, this is a short week. I'm not complaining either. After the week I've had outside in RL, it's nice that Billboard Breakdown's easy for once. And since we got so few tracks, I'm gonna keep the spirit of positivity. I'm dropping the dishonorable mention for this week. Not even gonna bother. Worst of the week, yeah, it's Future's Commas, no question. Best of the week, also pretty easy, with Ludacris and Miguel's Good Lovin'. And you know what? I think I'm gonna give the honorable mention to DJ Snake and Dillon Francis' Get Low. Not quite sure I like it as much as when Lil Jon and the Yin Yang Twins did it, but you know what? This song's got a place too, so I'll take it there. But until next week, let's hope we can co-spine the pretty easy weeks. I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown on Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.